So I was gonna do a whole video review about the newly released Jumanji 3. You know, it makes sense. It's a new film, there's plenty to talk about, and I can go into reboots and doing them well and all that malarkey. And then I realized it already released. Google's adamant that it came out on the 16th, but no, a full week earlier in the UK. I don't know. So I figured the moment was lost and I'll have better luck next time or something. Then another new thing popped up on our screens, the first Ghostbusters Afterlife trailer. Yet another reboot in somewhat the same vein as Jumanji, and looking at the responses, they're not too bad. 90% of the comments are sharing their glee of completely writing off the 2016 edition, and with it taking a more direct bloodline approach to the series, maybe it could be something to look forward to. And we better get used to looking forward to reboots anyway, as it's certainly the era we're in right now. The Lion King was redone, Space Jam's getting a sequel, Bill and Ted are reuniting, and though there's a whole spectrum of people's opinions on each reboot case, love it or hate it, it prints money. So as we're on the cusp of a whole new decade, let's discuss some other potential properties that have yet to be fished out for the big screen once again. Generally, the craze has been all about the 80s, but perhaps the 2020s can rave about the 90s a little bit. I threw some 90s films in there to spice up the list. Whether it's accurate, I guess we'll just have to see. Now, I know a lot of what I'm gonna mention is gonna anger some people. I get it. Every point is gonna be a bad choice no matter what to somebody. So just remember, this is all hypothetical. The stupider it sounds, the more likely it is, right? Yeah, we'll go with that. Now, I've got two categories for these reboots, and I'll be bouncing between them for each mention. The God yes category and the God no category. You can work out how they came to be. Right, let's get into the depressing or exhilarating list, depending on your perspective. Number 1, God yes, The Matrix. Imagine it, upgraded CGI, top-of-the-line action, Keanu Reeves is always a win, and it's a beloved franchise that can be improved on further. There are elements of the later sequels that people don't like, and it's just a cool series that we all enjoy. It's probably one of the latest ones on this list, considering it just came out in 1999, but even still, it's very much something that is on people's minds a lot, and some executives probably gonna snatch it up at some point. Oh, it turns out a fourth one is actually being made. Well, alrighty then, I guess it's already happening. Number 2, for our first God no category, it is Back to the Future. Starting with not only what we don't want, but is one that I'm pretty sure is pretty impossible to do. This franchise is probably one of my favorite movie franchises of all time, and the director themselves has said that they do not want a reboot. Perfection is just being left alone, though I guess that can really be said for any of the ones on this list. The joy of this film is its time period, and as it's all about time travel, I think going back to it again can only mess things up further. But then again, I would watch a Back to the Future reboot, but conceptually you'll have to pry it out of my cold, dead hands. Number 3, for God yes, Conan the Barbarian, an iconic hero of the 80s, being played by Arnold Schwarzenegger really made the character such a beast. And though that buff masculine trope is very much lost this day and age, it could be a very nostalgic thing and would be a cool return to form, regardless of how the story went out, really. And interestingly enough, something like that was attempted in 2011 with Jason Momoa and Morgan Freeman, but it bombed. Maybe they'll try again. It has been 8 years since it failed. To me, it seems like it's ripe for the picking. Number 4, Home Alone, anyone? Wait, what? Fight Club! God no! Everyone knows the plot of Fight Club. It's fairly recent, again being 1999, and I really don't think too much can be gained for a reboot here. It's successful, sure, but it's not a good fit for the 2020s. It's so perfectly 90s, being boring office jobs that were very much kind of similar to that decade, and generally it's just not as relatable in this day and age, unless they wanted to put some sort of spin on mental illness, which could be a whole other can of worms. Either way, I don't think this is one that we want or could really be too susceptible, as much as it is quite a popular film. Though I guess it did have a slightly open-ended ending. It's a cult film that shouldn't be tarnished, no. Number 5, for God yes, Groundhog Day. I know, I'm hesitant saying yes as well, but it just seems like an easy pick. Sure, it's iconic with Murray in the 90s, and it was dubbed to be culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant, which is a pretty big award, At the same time though, it is also pretty ripe for a reboot by anyone who wants it. We've seen other films take on daily time loops and many things that have been inspired by this one original, and bringing back the original plot could open for many more options. A modern day Groundhog Day has some mileage to run with. It even got a stage musical adaptation in 2016. But give me a Murray cameo appearance if you're gonna do it. Ghostbusters can do it. And speaking of repeating itself, I apologise if you've heard this before, but do consider subscribing. I seem to be snowballing into higher numbers each video at the moment, so if you want to join the bandwagon, come subscribe. I'm always battling that non-subscriber viewer percentage. Number 6, for God no, Saving Private Ryan. I've seen so many did you knows about the hidden details of this film that makes me pretty much believe, and as many people do as well, that this film is just perfect and a higher production quality really isn't needed. There are so many practical effects in this film that it is timeless, especially with the time period focus. This is an impenetrable film, and it was similarly awarded the whole Library of Congress culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant element. Don't go there, executives. Don't you dare. Number 7, for God yes, please, Airplane. You know, as a kid, this film scared me. The scene where everyone's queuing up to beat up that lady in her seat really scared me, thinking about being in pain like that girl would have been later on with the gun and the boxing gloves. For like 6-year-old me, it really turned my stomach. Watching it now though, it's a masterpiece. It was also awarded the whole culturally, historically, whatever. And the whole film has such chaotic humor that I'd love to cover one day. And honestly, I miss that kind of style. It's been so long that I demand something of that element again, be it the same premise of being on the airplane with a new spin, or an entirely new plot with that same style. Just tell me you wouldn't want another one of these kind of films. Now, because of the numbers on this list and the fact that my yes and no lists aren't entirely balanced, we're gonna hop to another God yes film. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? The OG mind-blower of cartoons and live action. Again, it was dubbed historically aesthetically significant as well, and we've seen follow-up inspirations that have come since then. Space Jam's even doing another one. But we haven't seen Roger himself in years, and bringing more of that back with some upgraded tech can only be a good thing. Maybe it could blow our minds again. Plus, you know the internet would go wild on certain appearances. Number 9, for God no, it's another impenetrable film to me, Shawshank Redemption. One of the highest ranked films of all time to many people. Everyone loves praising this film. It's impenetrable, right? Perfect to many, many people. Again, dubbed culturally, historically, aesthetically significant, and a reboot would only be a shallow recasting for money. It would maybe work, because it is a fairly simple prison story to tell, but at what cost? Dignity? According to executives, that's already long gone, so I certainly hope not. God, no. Up next, for God yes, The Goonies. It's perfect for many people's childhoods, and yet somehow it's not been jumped on a million times yet. This choice just seems obvious to me. Again, it's been dubbed incredibly significant and has been the source of plenty of inspirational material that has appeared later. To me, it just seems like only a matter of time. Sure, some of those tropes like the genius engineering kid is a little outdated these days, but maybe with a twist or a new version, or like them having kids and their kids going on an adventure, it just seems like it would work kind of well. Sorry, nostalgic fans. Number 11, for God no, it is The Breakfast Club. Another perfect film for so many people. It was iconic for an era. Again, I don't know what's happening. This list is just full of all those ones with that significant award, but there it is. And yet, it seems like the perfect bait for some greedy executive, bringing back those personality tropes with maybe a modern twang, or even updating those tropes as one would imagine. I mean, you could kind of say that the Jumanji reboot already did it. It seems like a simple formula to hash out again, with some dark motivations onto why it's actually happening. And yet, I bet people would still hail to the cinemas for it. They did in 2015 for the remastering 30-year anniversary thing. And before we mention our very last God yes section, it's time for the runner-ups. These were the ones I put in a maybe category that could potentially happen, but I'm a little less sure. From least likely to most likely, first of all we have Titanic. You don't think people would really milk a tragic event twice, would you? Oh, they already did? Thrice? No. Up next, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I love it. It is popular, right? No one I know seems to know it exists. And we love Rick Moranis. Bringing him back in some kind of form, if he does come back to acting, would be amazing. Plus, we have better tech now to make that kind of CGI shrunken down events look pretty cool now. I know it had sequels that weren't so good, but go back to the original. Give us something classic, yet all brand new, fresh and good. Die Hard. It's a meme of a Christmas film, and maybe if it releases next year and during the holiday season, people would probably ironically rush towards it. Maybe. Or how's about Mrs. Doubtfire? I don't want to take away too much of Robin Williams' legacy, we already took a piece from Jumanji, but it is hilariously iconic, and though we obviously won't have Robin anymore, it could be a fun story to see reinvented again. Plus, with that modern era of trying to mix in with your modern day kids, could have a slightly new twist. I don't know, I could just see it happening, honestly. Or here's an interesting one. Toy Story, the original one. Obviously, it's not happening anytime soon, with Pixar not wanting to go back to its old franchises again. But I wonder how long it will be before some old CGI animated film is going to get a remaster with new CGI technology. I personally would love to see the original Toy Story with the photorealism of Toy Story 4. It would be such an interesting twist to see in the industry. I mean, Disney's already doing it to their 2D animated stuff, so I guess it's only a matter of time. And finally, The Truman Show. It's stepping a little bit on Jim Carrey's toes here, but it was very much ahead of its time. Media always staring down at you. Nowadays, it could have a fresh new restart, and though it was an iconic film of the 90s, I feel it could very much now work in this day and age. It would be interesting to see, even if it had like a whole marketing element of actually trying to live stream an actor for a while. I don't know, there's a lot of opportunities there, and though it is somewhat recent being the 90s, if there was any film that I thought could come out of the 90s, maybe, it would probably be The Truman Show. Weird. But yes, our final film to mention at the very top of our list, for God, yes, kind of, I guess, depending on how much you really hate these kind of reboots ideas, for our number one slot is Alien. There are so many films that hit that 80s horror goodness right now. It is literally the top of the trend. Alien as well was dubbed culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant, and we've seen a lot of Alien sequels recently, and they've been slowly less successful at box office, I believe. So I can almost see some higher up just turning around and asking for a core reboot. It would certainly be a twist on the whole franchise, don't you think? And I think it would kind of work. Heading back to the humbler beginnings, maybe refreshing how the aliens present themselves, now that we can go back to the idea of not knowing what they look like as a start, and starting anew would almost be a little bit refreshing. And a badass female lead once again would only gain more praise in this day and age. To me, it seems like the most likely pick of the future, even though it's very much already got its own franchise that's been continuing. Whether Predator as well goes back to its core with that kind of element, I don't know, but it seems like something that can certainly be monetized and taken back to its roots. But what do I know? I was born in '96, so I watched none of these films in the cinemas. Now, how much do you hate all of these ideas? The topic of reboots often comes with heated arguments and anger over disrupted nostalgia, and yet sometimes they're surprisingly golden. Jumanji was one such that surprised me, and though I hoped the third focused on video game glitches instead of more of the same gimmicks, the ending and the emotional value was something that I really enjoyed. Wait, was this whole video just one long-winded Jumanji 3 review? Regardless, I'm sure there'll be more Jumanjis to come as long as people flock to the screens, and Reboots will only continue to regurgitate those films we hold so fondly in our distant memories. I, for one, have come to accept these terrible ideas in the making. Nothing we do in life matters anyway. And on that note, my name's been Dazz, you didn't really care, and I'll see you in a bit. What do you think? Is Rick Moranis going to be coming back for Ghostbusters Afterlife, or Honey, I Shrunk the Kids? You know you'll want it, and we'd love to welcome him back with open arms. Ugh, what a gem of a man.